Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, and this is another one of those fun shows that I really love doing because it's going to involve a family that went on their first Disney Cruise Line cruise, and we can always learn so much about, what it's like to plan for that first cruise and really experience that first cruise. So I'd like to welcome to the show today, Christy from Louisiana. How are you doing today, Christy?
I am doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. And we're getting into the heat of summer, and I guess it's pretty toasty warm down there, huh?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Nice and hot, humid, the best.
Well, we are going to talk about your family's cruise aboard the Disney Fantasy last March 2nd through the 9th. I think we just missed you by about 2 weeks. We did the Eastern.
Yes. You guys went right after us. I was watching your trip on Facebook.
Oh, man, that was our first time on the Fantasy, and I can't wait to hear your kind of impressions on the Fantasy. But before we talk about that, let's just talk about your guys', let's talk about who makes up your family and then kind of your Walt Disney experience or Walt Disney World experience or what you guys like to do.
Sure. So it's me and my husband, Dustin, and we have 2 children. I have a son who's 8. His name is Paxton. I'm going to say his name because he loves the show, so he'll be excited to hear his name on there. Nice. And my daughter, Delilah, is 3. So we are a big Disney Parks family. We've gone to Disney World pretty much at least once a year, every year since Paxton was born. And then there was even a year in there, Delilah's first year, that she had joined our family. We went maybe like 6 times. We had annual passes, and we did a couple of long trips, a couple of short trips. And we've done Disneyland a few times. My husband and I did an Adventures by Disney, and we did the Viva Italia trip and we tacked on a couple of days at the end at Disneyland Paris. So we've done the parks, and I was really interested in trying a cruise. I had never been on any kind of cruise ever before. And I guess my thought process in switching to cruise line was I wanted to try a cruise, but if cruising wasn't for me, I didn't want to have never done a Disney cruise. So that was actually going to be my very first trip ever, but because because we booked it and then kind of had to wait so long till we actually cruised, we booked and went on a Viking cruise in the middle of there. So it didn't end up being my first cruise, but it was still an experience all its own because it's very different from Viking. So
was the Viking cruise a river cruise or was it a Viking ship out in the Caribbean?
It was a Viking Ocean cruise. We went with the people from the Dis Unplugged podcast. So they had put together a trip around the coast of Italy. And so a chance to go back to Italy again and, hang out with some people we had met online and stuff and kind of knew back and forth from Facebook and the Dis boards and stuff. And it just seemed like a really fun opportunity for my husband and I to do. So that was an amazing cruise.
Yeah, I kind of followed that one along too with what they talked about. I remember listening to their kind of recap and Viking just sounds like an amazing cruise line as well. And
it was nice.
Yeah, we could probably touch on that a little bit at the end. Just kind of give you a couple comparisons if you want. Was that just you and your husband? I wasn't with the kids?
Right. A Viking, at least for Ocean, I guess I don't know about the rest of theirs, but I think it's 16 and over. So all the rooms are just built for 2 people. So yeah, just my husband and I on that one.
I did not realize it's only 16 and older. Huh. Oh, well, there you go. I learn something new every day. Okay. Well, you guys have done a lot of different things with Disney. Obviously, going to the parks and ABD. How cool is that? Out to Disneyland. So you guys are planners. Talk to me a little bit about, so I'm guessing that a lot of planning and thought went into this cruise. Why did you pick the Fantasy sailing in the Western Caribbean? And then let's talk a little bit about how you planned for it.
We were kind of limited on what time we could go, so that almost kind of dictated which cruise we picked. We wanted to go at a time when the kids were out of school, so we picked Mardi Gras week. And, that changes depending on the year, but that just happened to be the week that it fell this year. We looked at anything that kind of fell within those dates. So I want to say there was at least like 1 3-night. We didn't really want to start with a 3. We kind of wanted to go all in, especially if we decided, hey, maybe cruising is not for us. We wanted to get the full experience. So there was this 7-night and then there was a 5-night. But again, we just kind of thought, if we're going to do it, let's just go for the full week. So we didn't really have a choice too much, in ship or itinerary because we only had those couple that we narrowed it down to. So we just decided to go for the 7-night and have lots of ship time, lots of port time. So that seemed to be the one that would work the best for us.
Perfect. So, somebody that's approaching this the first time, it can be kind of intimidating.
Yes.
Did you guys use a travel agent? Did you have a travel agent, or did you kind of do this all yourself?
We did have a travel agent. We used Dreams Unlimited that runs the DIS, and we used Kathy Whirling. She was super helpful, answered all of our questions because we had a lot. My husband is probably more, I would guess, the researcher. So he was the one that was kind of really looking into what room types were the best. Like, I still don't know categories and stuff. That still kind of boggles my mind, but he was the one that really dove deep into that to see what would work for our family the best, what would give us the best experience. Did we want to pay a little bit more? Did we want to go the cheapest we could and get inside, or, get something a little bit more open with the porthole, or did we want a veranda? And he was the one that really looked at that and compared it with our budget. But she answered a lot of our questions that we had as far as like checking in and, what kind of stuff we could reserve in advance. And we did some of our own research on the DIS boards, Facebook groups, listening to podcasts, yours, a couple other ones that we kind of actually, I think it was yours. And there was one other one that started right around the time that we were really starting to look into booking a cruise. So it was kind of perfect timing. It helped us through a lot of those first timer questions that we had about what's included in the cost. What do you have to pay extra for? What's the advantage or disadvantage of booking a Disney excursion or another company? So those kinds of questions, we did a lot of online research. Lots of times Facebook groups are really helpful just because people sometimes ask a question and you're like, oh man, I didn't even think of that. But that's some good information to kind of hold on to. So it was helpful having a travel agent. We can navigate the parks, pretty well by ourselves. So we don't need that assistance from an agent when we're booking like Disney World or Disneyland. We kind of have a good grip, but this was a whole different ballgame for us. My husband had been on one cruise as a teenager, so he also didn't have much cruising experience to go off of. So it was really, brand new territory for all of us.
I was going to ask you about that Facebook groups. That's one of the ones that I think has really helped us a lot recently on some of the cruises. So I really encourage, like you're saying, everybody out there that's going on their first time cruise to join that Facebook group.
Yeah.
It tends to be a lot of similar topics like fish extenders and things like that they're going to cover.
Right.
But especially if you're doing something a little bit out of the norm, potentially. When we went over to the Mediterranean, it was awesome because a lot of people are asking questions about like, what kind of hotels are you going to stay at, or where are you going to stay? Civitavecchia, you're going to go to Rome. So, and don't be afraid. I would say this too, and I'm not sure if you threw any questions out there, but don't be afraid to throw questions out there because it's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The knowledge on those Facebook groups, how many cruises some of these people have been on and just the answers you can get. So I think more and more, I really like that as a resource that people are. I really like using that or making sure that people use that as a resource. And like you said, sometimes people ask questions you didn't even think about.
Correct. Yeah. And you can get a lot of reviews. I did ask a bunch of questions about like what excursions to pick because our kids are so far apart in age, just finding something that all of us would enjoy because with it being our first cruise, like I had talked to a friend of Paxton at school, like their family is really big into the Disney cruises and they've done them, year after year. And so her mom was a great resource too, but they had like planned, one day her and the daughter were going to go do one thing and the dad and the son were going to go do something else. And when you've done a lot of cruises, it's maybe easier to just kind of split up and say, hey, we're going to go do this because he was a little bit older. So he wanted to do I don't think it was scuba diving, but where you put the helmet on and dive down or whatever, but she wasn't old enough. So you might be more willing to do that when you've done lots of cruises. So we wanted to find a good balance of something we could do that all of us would enjoy, even with that age gap.
Definitely. Okay. Any other advice you'd throw out for people sailing on their first cruise as far as planning goes?
It can be overwhelming, but the good thing about Disney is that once you kind of pick the one that you want to go with and you book it, you have so much time. If you book right when the itineraries are released, you have so much time to research. So look at the stuff you need to know at the beginning, like what room you're going to pick and that kind of stuff. And then the rest of it, don't stress about that until after you have it booked. And then you can look at the dining and the excursions and all that stuff. So don't, feel like you have to have all that information before you even book because you can have plan. We booked this cruise in October of 2017 and sailed in March of 2019. So we had lots of time to kind of gather information and make it not feel so stressful.
Perfect. Well, let's talk about the cruise itself. So
Sure.
You guys are in Louisiana. How do you guys normally get there? Do you fly or do you drive over? And where did you guys end up staying the night before?
So it kind of depends, I guess, just on flights. The problem with traveling over Mardi Gras is that flights that we normally would pick, like when we go to Disney World, maybe in October or something, we can usually find a Southwest flight that's direct New Orleans to Orlando. But when you're going over Mardi Gras, a lot of people are going to Disney World that time of year. So the flights are way more expensive. So we looked around at a couple of different places we could fly out of, but ultimately we just decided to go ahead and drive. And that eliminated one of the other hurdles we were trying to come up with, was how are we going to get from our hotel to the port in the morning? And then we were staying another night after the cruise was over. So figuring out that kind of transportation with one in car seat and all that. So ultimately it just ended up being easier to have our own vehicle so we could drive ourselves. We stayed at Kidani Village one night before the cruise, and then again on the back end.
Oh, that's perfect. Did you guys do anything in Walt Disney World, or did you guys just kind of hang out and use the pools?
Yeah, so we didn't do any parks or anything. The day we arrived, we didn't have much time. It was just kind of the evening. So we really just enjoyed the animals. We had a Savannah view for that one night. So we just kind of chilled out in the room and had some giraffes that were right outside of our window. So the kids just thought that was incredible. But it was just a low key night. So that way we could get up early and get moving the next morning, because we left Thursday night, but we still had kind of a good chunk of the drive Friday morning. So by the time we got there, it wasn't a whole lot of time to go do anything. So we just enjoyed the resort.
Yeah, Kidani and Jambo House, there's so much stuff to do there just in and of itself.
Exactly. They're so beautiful. And the kids didn't even ask to go to the pool. Like, we had kind of thought that maybe that's what we would do, but they were just so excited to walk around to all the little observation stops and stuff and check out the animals. Like, it didn't even, register. They didn't even ask about a pool. They were just happy to be there. So.
Just a side note, that's where we're staying before our next cruise in October. So, okay, well, let's talk about heading over that first day. So you guys drive over. Did you park in the parking lot there, or what was your plan as far as that goes?
We did park in the lot. That was another thing. My husband had kind of done a lot of research on offsite lots and stuff, but ultimately it just seemed like it was worth paying a little bit more for the convenience of just being right there at the port and not having to worry about shuttling over or anything like that. So we parked right there at the port. I think he had read something about parking on the level 3 of the garage, and you can just walk over to another security point instead of having to go down to the one on the first floor. So there wasn't as many people in line. So we got through really quickly up there.
Oh, that's perfect. That's a great tip there. I kind of forget about that one. Yeah. So basically what Christy's saying is, like, if you pull into lot 3 or level 3, it's on the same level as the check-in area. So kind of you miss all those people like us that are getting dropped off from rental car shuttles or buses or whatnot.
Right down on the first level and then having to come up. One thing I'll mention is we did kind of get stopped. He had bought one of those over-the-door hanging shoe organizers, planned to use in the room, and the stipulation with those is you can't use metal hooks. Well, I guess this one he had bought had 4 hooks, and he had taken 2 out, but they caught the other 2 on the scanner. So if you bring a confiscated item, we do have a little experience with that. They just they hold on to it and give you a little ticket. So if you want to pick it up at the end, you can just, when you get off the ship, you can bring the little ticket and get your item back, just, in case anybody gets caught with something like we did, but it ended up being fine.
Well, that's a good tip there. Don't use the metal hooks on the shoe hangers. Huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Metal hooks. Yeah.
Well, how was embarkation then? Anything about stand out for the process of getting on the ship before we talk about the ship itself?
It was really easy for us. We had no problems. We had picked the earliest port arrival time we could, which was 10:45. It took us a little bit longer to get there because we had planned to stop Thursday night when we got into Florida at the Welcome Center and get a Sun Pass, but it just ended up not working out. It was taking us longer to drive. The kids had finally fallen asleep, so we didn't stop. So on Saturday morning, we had to factor in a lot more time than we thought we would need for tolls. So we probably parked around 11 and walked over. door. We got right in line to check in. They gave the kids their magic bands for the kids club. They put a lock on my son's so he wouldn't lose it, but they said it was considered a choking hazard for my daughter, who's 3. So they just gave us her magic band. They didn't put a little lock on hers. They actually, as soon as we checked in, they were already calling our boarding group to get in. We were in group 6, I think. So we didn't have to wait around at all, but we did decide to hop in line and meet Mickey before we got on the ship, just because we were, also excited. So that was, you see him standing there in front of the model of the ship, and it seemed like, a must-do thing before you get on. So took a picture with Mickey, and then we were on the ship in just a couple of minutes after that. So it all went very quickly for us. We weren't sitting around waiting, trying to keep the kids occupied or anything like that. We just got right on the ship.
Perfect. So you step on board the Disney Fantasy, you walk into that lobby that first time, you get your names announced. What was that like? And what was kind of the expressions on your kids' faces?
They were so excited. I knew about it because I had seen videos of people walking on and stuff, but it's still not the same thing as having it actually happen. And they were just amazed. My son, he was kind of one of the catalysts for deciding to do a cruise too, because he was I don't think he really knew what it was, but from a young age, every time he saw a commercial or saw a travel show, he was like, I want to go on a Disney cruise. I want to go on a Disney cruise. So actually stepping on the ship, his eyes were huge. There's characters there waving to you. There's you look around and Ariel's meeting up on the balcony, and it's so gorgeous in there, and everybody's clapping for you. And they were amazed. It was way better to experience in person than to just see somebody else, and kind of know, oh, that's what they do. But it was way cooler to have it be your family.
A little bit more dramatic than getting on the Viking ship, not to take away from Viking at all.
Absolutely. They did give us a warm towel and an apple, but definitely not the same as announcing your name. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I remember getting on Norwegian the first time, and I think we walked into a hallway and then just kind of down a hallway and eventually the elevator. So
yeah, they were all very nice and friendly, but there was not the pomp and circumstance of getting on the Viking ship for sure.
Definitely. So, okay, you guys are planners. What was, and I'm sure you read all the different things that you could do that first day you get on. It's kind of a whirlwind of a day. What was kind of your thoughts as you got on?
It was absolutely a whirlwind for us. And actually, one of the first things that I wanted to do was change a character breakfast we had booked, because when they gave us the paper navigator for the next day, when we checked in, they gave us one and we were looking at it in line. Since it was Mardi Gras week, they had Ash Wednesday that fell during the cruise. And so we saw that they had Catholic Mass available every day, and we had our breakfast booked for Sunday morning right at the same time that they had Mass. So we wanted to see if we could move that so that we could accommodate both things. So the first thing I did was I wanted to go change that, and I went to the wrong place. So just FYI, if you need to change a character breakfast, you go to the Port Adventures desk, not downstairs to Enchanted Garden where you go if you want to get Palo or if you want to change your dining time. So I wasted a little bit of time doing that, but it was just me. So the kids went and met a character with my husband while I kind of took care of that. Most people, I think, especially first timers, you go to lunch at Cabanas. So, we went up there, and it's pretty chaotic because everybody has their carry-on luggage, and, you're dodging all these people that are trying to do the same thing, and they're balancing plates and pulling luggage and all that. So that was interesting, kind of, welcome to the ship. But yeah, we did that. We wanted to hit the open house for the kids club so that we could get them, comfortable, especially my 3-year-old. She is potty trained. So she just met the requirements of the age and being potty trained. So I wanted to make sure she was comfortable. She kind of knew where everything was and knew what to expect, and just kind of show her around. So we made sure we hit that. And, you got to go to the sail away party. And then by then it's time for dinner. So it was just even though we were probably some of the first groups, especially for first time cruisers, to get on the ship, it just seemed like the day went by in a blur, because then all of a sudden it's dinner time and you're, freshening up and heading to the dining room, and you're all excited to see this, amazing Disney service that everybody tells you about on the cruise ships. And so, yeah, it was a whirlwind of a day for sure.
So just to throw it out there, and I think we've talked this on other shows too, if you want to skip Cabanas and go and have lunch, they usually have, I think it's Royal Court that was open, but it might have been Animator's Palette, but you can check on the Paper Navigator. So that's just another option too, because like you said, it does get kind of chaotic if you got younger kids trying to find a table. Everybody's got their luggage and everything else. So
I think I would definitely do that next time and try to sit down. It just seemed like that's what everybody says that they do when they first get on the ship is go to lunch at Cabana. So we were like, all right, that's what we're gonna do. But next time, I think we'd probably would go with the calmer situation would be a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, cool. So let's talk about your cabin, then we'll talk about dining a little bit. So what did you guys book and what did you think?
We got a deluxe family ocean view room. So we had one of the large portholes. We kind of went back and forth. It wouldn't have been too much more to go up to a veranda, but my husband and I are not like sit out on the balcony and drink coffee or wine type people. We are usually busy. So when we go to bed, it's like the kids go to bed and we're going to bed too. It's not like we're staying up late because the kids are going to bed at 7:00 at night. So we kind of thought maybe we'll just try the ocean view. That way the kids can still see outside. We thought the big porthole would be kind of cool because they could sit in it. So of course that was the first thing they wanted to do when they walked in the room was sit in the porthole. So they thought it was really cool. And the room was quite large compared to what I had pictured in my mind, I guess, but we had plenty of room. 4 people, lots of luggage, lots of clothes. We found a space for everything. That was one of the best things about the stateroom was, the whole time we were unpacking, we were just like, man, there's so much space to put things. There was just drawers and cabinets everywhere. All the luggage fit under the bed. So we didn't have clutter all over the spaces, which was, I was trying to avoid because that can make your room feel even smaller when you just kind of have stuff put out everywhere. So it was really nice. And the hanger worked out really well too. The shoe organizer, because we could put like hairbrushes and like the kids' small shoes and stuff like that. So all those little cluttery things could be, picked up off the floor and stuff. So it kept the room pretty well organized. Did
you guys put that in the closet or where did you guys hang that?
So there's like a hook on the wall. And so my husband had brought some zip ties and a coat hanger. So he just used the little holes where the hooks are supposed to go when you use the metal hooks to put the zip ties through and just hung it on the clothes hanger and then hung that on the hook.
Okay. Did you guys bring anything else or anything else that you read about that you brought to kind of help you guys organize?
Yes. Our travel agency, they send out like a little gift basket of stuff that you can use on the cruise. So just some stuff, even if you don't get one of those, but just like things that they sent that we used a lot was like the big plastic clips that have metal on the back or have a magnet on the back because we could clip the the curtains, clip them closed so that if we were trying to sleep in or whatever, the sun wouldn't, start peeking in and wake anybody up too early. So those were good for keeping the room dark. And then you could just take them off and stick them to the wall after, since the walls are magnetic. We had a little dry erase board that they gave us too. That was fun, more so that the kids could just like write little messages that they were excited about. Not so much because we were, splitting up and needed to say like, hey, meet us over here at this time or whatever, but it would be good for that too. If you had family with, teenagers or whatever, they could just jot, where they were going to be. I'm trying to think. We brought some cups, like larger tumblers to use at the drink stations on the pool deck. What else did they send? Because they sent us a lot of good stuff that we wouldn't have thought of. They give you like a highlighter for the paper navigators, but we were one of the first cruises, I think, that they stopped using those. So I guess those will be phased out here soon. So just little things like that. And It's not stuff you need, but if you think about it and you have it and just throw it in your suitcase, it can, just kind of help while you're in the room.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I like the idea of, I always forget to bring the cups, the bigger cups, so you can have those up by the pool deck. So, well, let's switch over to dining then. You guys get to experience rotational dining, and on board the Disney Fantasy, you got Royal Court, Animator's Palette, and Enchanted Garden. Where did you guys start off? And maybe kind of give me some highlights of each one of the restaurants or your thoughts on them.
Sure. So we started off in Royal Court the first night. We went there 2 nights. We had 3 nights at Animator's Palette, and then we were scheduled for 2 nights at Enchanted Garden, but we ended up skipping one of those nights. It was probably our least favorite of the 3. I think the menu items just didn't maybe appeal to us as much. It was a lot of seafood, and it's not the same kind of seafood that we're used to in Louisiana, so it didn't appeal to us as much. But for the other 2 restaurants, I really enjoyed the food. None of us are very adventurous eaters, but I found that there was something for everybody. You could kind of go as, as fancy or as simple as you wanted, which we liked. And then my husband definitely took advantage of ordering more than one thing if he wasn't sure if he was going to like it. There was many nights he ordered 2 entrees. If he couldn't pick a dessert, he just picked all of the ones that he wanted. So he definitely enjoyed that part, because, sometimes like sauces or things, maybe you're not sure exactly what it's going to be. So you don't want to get this meal and be like, oh, well, this was not good. But all the food we really enjoyed. Probably my favorite menu was our Star Wars Day at Sea night. They had a special menu that night, and they had this really good, like, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, a biscuit, green beans. That one was really delicious. And then they had a couple of other, like Royal Court had this really good kind of Alfredo Parmesan type pasta with like a breaded chicken on top. That was good. Overall, I thought the food was excellent. We really enjoyed it every night. Like there was really nothing that we could complain about or send back or anything like that. Everything was really delicious. I think overall as a family, probably Animator's Palette was our favorite. The kids just really enjoyed the shows that they had every night. We got the Crush show one night. We were right next to the tank. So he came over to our table and was talking to us and stuff. And then there's the night that we had the animation show where you draw your picture and then they animate it on the screen. So that was really cool. They really enjoyed that. So yeah, I think that one was probably our favorite. So it was probably the best one that we could have gone to 3 times in our rotation.
I do like the fact that, the food, they give you plenty of food, don't get me wrong on that, but they're not huge portions, so you can, if you want to try a couple different things, that is a possibility. It's not like going to some of the restaurants you go to where you just get such huge portions, so...
Right. Like, especially Disney World, those portions are huge, like that you can share those things. And this, most nights, and we don't typically do like 3-course meals anywhere else we would go. But every night we ate well and I don't think I ever felt like stuffed to where I felt sick. Sometimes you can kind of go overboard, but it was always just like perfect amounts of food. So. Yeah, we liked the rotational dining, just getting to try different places, every night. And Delilah really liked Royal Court because it was all princess themed. We were in the room with Tiana and Naveen, which couldn't have been more appropriate for us. So it was great for a Mardi Gras cruise from Louisiana, and you're in the room with Tiana. So that was really cool. She liked seeing all the pictures on the walls and stuff of the princesses.
That's perfect. So where'd you guys eat the one night where you didn't go to the dining rooms?
Yeah, so we were on the cruise the week that Captain Marvel was released. So when they posted the times in the app of what time they were going to be showing it, it was all during the day on our Castaway Cay day, and we knew we were not going to want to miss Castaway Cay to go watch a movie. So they had a showing that evening at 5. So we kind of had to decide, okay, do we want to go to the dining room on our last night, or do we want to go see the movie? So we decided to just grab some food from the pool bar and eat in the theater. So it happened to work out too that it was our second Enchanted Garden night, and we had looked over the menu and we're kind of like, I don't know, that nothing was really jumping out at us for that night anyway. So it really lined up really well.
That's perfect. Yeah. Well, before we talk about, I want to talk a little bit about the kids clubs, since your kids are a little bit, further apart in age and kind of their experiences. But before we do that, I've never had anybody talk about Mass on board, or the services. How was that, and where did they have that? They
had it in, is it the Tube, the one that's
up in the front,
kind of like England themed?
Yes,
and
the Tube.
So it was there. The priest had been on, he was talking to us kind of before while he was setting up, and he said he's done hundreds of Disney cruises. They usually bring him on board when they have like a big Catholic event. So like for this week, it was Ash Wednesday, Easter Sundays, Christmas, stuff like that. They'll try to have somebody on board. So he will say Mass every morning for for people that want to come. So it was maybe 30 minutes. It was just a small little ceremony in the Tube. And my son was really excited. He actually picked him to come up and help altar serve or whatever. So he thought that was really cool to kind of get to participate. So it was really nice. He offered it at 8:30 every morning. So you always had an opportunity to go. So we didn't miss our Sunday Mass, because Sunday was a sea day. So it worked out really great that was available. I wasn't counting on that. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, we definitely have to make sure we do that. And it was a big enough space. There was plenty of room for the people that came. And he was really nice. We saw him on board several times. We saw him on Castaway Castaway Cay, and we were joking because it was Friday, and Friday during Lent, you don't eat meats. We were like, what's he eating over there? And he just had a big plate of fruit, and he was like, we were like, man, he's so good. Like he was taking it seriously. So it was really cool.
Yeah, that's a hard thing when it's barbecue too.
Yes. Oh, it was so hard. I felt terrible, but I was like, oh, then what if this is the only time we ever come to Castaway? Hopefully it won't be, but it's like we'll repent for it later, I guess.
Well, let's turn to the kids clubs a little bit. Where's your sons and daughters' experiences in the clubs? How do they like it, and what do they do?
It really surprised me, to be honest, because I think leading up to the cruise, my son was so excited about it. I really thought we were never going to see him during the cruise, like that we were going to have to drag him out for family activities and stuff like that. He really enjoyed it, but he did not love it as much as I thought he was going to. The first night at dinner, they come around. I had heard about this for the second seating, but they actually were doing it for both seatings on our cruise. I don't know if that's typical or not, but they'll have the counselors come to the dining room. They'll kind of walk around, and when the kids see them, if they're finished eating and they want to go to the club, they all kind of gather up at the front, and they'll bring them over to the club while the parents finish eating dinner. So the first night they both went, and then he seemed like he had a great time. But then the next couple of days, it was like, he went for a little while the next day on our sea day. But then every time we would ask him like, hey, do you want to go to the club for a little while? He was like, no, I'll just stay with you guys. So that really surprised me. I think he had fun when he was there, but it was just kind of getting them to go. So that didn't really turn around until about halfway through the cruise. I was talking to the other family that was at our dining room table with us. I was telling the mom about it. And I was like, I don't know what the deal is. Like, they don't want to go to the kids club anymore. So she started talking up the Pluto pajama party that was happening that night, and how her daughter was so excited to go and was going in her pajamas and going to have so much fun. And the kids were like, well, I want to do that. So going to that evening, I want to say that was maybe like Tuesday or Wednesday night that happened. And it kind of changed their minds on the club a little bit, because they could not stop talking as we were bringing them back to the room. They were just chattering and wanted to tell us every funny thing that had happened. And they were like, we got them in the room, got them changed for bed, and they're still talking. And we're like, okay, good night, guys. And they're like, but then Pluto did this. And we're pulling the curtain like, okay, go to sleep. And they're still like, let me just tell you one more thing. So after that, we kind of didn't feel bad being those parents that were like, hey, Daddy and I are going to go do this. You're going to go to the kids club for a little while. And they were like, okay. There was another Pluto pajama party happening Friday night. So every time I kind of had to use that as a little bit of leverage. I was like, hey, if you want to go again Friday night, like I need you to go just for a little while. And they were like, okay. And they'd go. And like I said, they'd always have fun. Every time we go get them, they didn't want to leave, but it was just, they needed that extra push to go, I guess. I was surprised. My 3-year-old, she spent most of the time in the lab, I think just because her brother was there. So every time I went to go pick him up, she was over there. And the counselors were always kind of, playing with her, drawing with her, that kind of stuff. So she wasn't just like this tiny little kid in this room full of bigger kids kind of getting lost in the shuffle. So they had, art projects they brought back. I don't think he went for any of the sloppy science stuff. He had kind of showed an interest in that before the cruise, but then once we were like, hey, do you want to go do it? He was like, no, that's okay. But he really liked that they had the like backlit tables where you could trace different pictures that they had, like of Star Wars vehicles and characters and stuff like that. He loves to draw, so he enjoyed that. And they had movies, and they got to color pillowcases for the pajama party. So they did end up having a lot of fun. It just wasn't quite what I expected. I thought they were going to be those kids that we'd have to drag out every time, we wanted to take them to do something. And it really wasn't.
It's different for everybody, obviously. Mm-hmm. Everybody's kids are a little bit different. I think the one thing that kind of helps sometimes too is having, I think that if you just go during the middle of the day when nothing's really necessarily going on, it's a lot of chaos in there, it seems like.
Yeah.
But if it seems like, having that Pluto's pajama party or super sloppy science, or, having an activity like that, maybe introducing, if your kid's a little bit more hesitant, introducing it like that, it's more of a group-led thing. And I think they can sometimes meet other kids that way. And
Yeah, I think that helped a lot going to like a structured activity,
right.
And more saying like, hey, they're doing this in a little while. Do you want to go for that? Instead of just saying, hey, do you want to go to the club? Because they were like, nah.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say. And you said it much better than I did.
Yeah. Yeah. It was easy to kind of, and I enjoyed using the app, but like I had said, maybe on one of the Facebook posts about it, I didn't really know any different because we had never really had a chance to get attached to Paper Navigator. So I was fine kind of maneuvering through the app. You could select like the kids club and just kind of filter through and see what activities they had coming up for the day. So it was a little bit easier to kind of scroll through and say, hey, they have this, this, and this today. Do any of those interest you? And, you can set your little favorites, and they give you little pop-up alerts like this is starting in 15 minutes. This is starting in 10 minutes to just kind of remind you. And I think that that helped a lot. And now, it's so funny because they didn't seem disinterested, but just not as interested as I thought. But when you ask them now, like, what was your favorite thing about the cruise? Both of them say the kids club. So you just never know with kids. I mean, they're so wishy-washy about stuff sometimes, but they enjoyed it. In the end, they said that it was one of the best things about the cruise.
Well, perfect. Well, let's talk about some of the things you guys did on board the ship before we go into the port adventures you guys did. But what were some of the things that you like to do as a family, or you found out that you enjoyed as a family, maybe some things that you and your husband got to do?
We went to a lot of trivias. We thought those were fun. We did a couple of the family ones, which were a lot more quiet and low key. And then we got to go to the first adult only one was the night of the pajama party. They did, I think it was maybe 90s music or something. And we had Chris.
He's awesome, isn't he?
He was amazing. It was like a whole different vibe in the place. It was like, oh, this is what fun trivia is, because the family ones, it's just kind of like one little cast member standing up there reading the questions and everybody's jotting them down. He was telling jokes and, telling us, like, especially for 90s music, he's like, if you're not sure, put, whatever band, just put that, maybe it'll be right, stuff like that. So he was super entertaining. So we got to see the clipboard story too, that Zach had talked about on his trip report. It was so funny because we didn't hear the whole saga. We had missed, some of the adult only ones early in the cruise, but just, he would go on and on about it, his clipboard being graffitied and all this, and made a big production of it. It was really funny. So some of the other cast members coming in and interacting with him, getting everybody in a good mood. It was a lot of fun.
I like the fact that he goes around and interacts with you as you're doing the trivia too. He's not just standing up there doing it. He's interacting with everybody.
He was amazing. Yeah. It was great. So we liked doing the trivia, both family and we did a few just adult ones. We did some of the drawing classes. We did a lot of character meets. We had booked both the Princess Gathering and the Frozen Gathering tickets when we did our online check-in. We had one morning, I think it was our Grand Cayman Day, that we did the Princess Gathering. So we just got to go through one line and we met Cinderella, Belle, Ariel, and Tiana. On our Castaway Cay morning was the only day I could get it, but I picked the earliest time. We did the Frozen Gathering and got to meet Anna and Elsa. And then just kind of looking through the app and seeing what other characters were out. We really enjoyed just kind of hunting around the ship for that. The kids really enjoyed the Midship Detective Agency. They had a blast with that. We were not great at the trivia, but my husband and I did kind of like sneak in a sort of half win on the last night of the cruise. It was really crowded, and I had gone earlier to get a table. And these two girls, I think they were sisters, came in and asked if they could share a table. So we were like, sure. And it was like, hey, do you want to work together? They're like, yeah, sure, that's fine. It was 2000s music, and I thought maybe like 2000 to 2010 I'd be okay. But Chris said it was going to be all the way up to current, so I was like, oh, we are screwed. Like, I don't know any current music. This girl, one of the girls, pulls lists out of her purse from old trivia, like from old cruises she's done. So she had like notes, and she knew every song. We only missed one song she didn't know at all. And one, she just got the official title wrong. So we ended up winning. And I was like, I feel like I did not contribute to this at all, but I got a really nice prize because apparently they had won a bunch. And Chris remembered and was like, oh, yeah, keychains. Like, let me get you something that we hardly ever give out. So we all got a DCL like baseball cap and we basically like mooched off their answers. Like we didn't know any of them. So it was really funny that we got that like half win.
Hey, I'm telling you, winning anything on board those ships, man, it's harder than running a marathon, I think.
It's competitive. Hard. Like Even ones we thought we were doing pretty good, I was like, man, some of these people are so good. Like they weren't missing any. So we didn't stand a chance for the other ones we did. We did like a movie quotes one. Even that one we worked with another couple and we failed miserably at that one. We did 90s music. I thought I'd be pretty good at. Nope. Like it's a lot harder than it seems.
It is. Yeah. Well, how about the shows then? Did you guys take in any of the shows? Did the kids like that, or did they go to the clubs instead?
The kids came to 2 of the Broadway shows. So they came to the Wishes and Believe. The night of the pajama party was Aladdin. So just my husband and I went to that one. There was one other night, him and I were on our own. The kids were in the kids club and we saw, I cannot think of his name. He was a singer. And he would like take requests and he was singing all kinds of stuff. Like he knew Black Eyed Peas. He was singing Beatles. He was all over the place. And he sang a song about having the cleanest hands in the world on the cruise line. He was pretty funny. I can't remember what his name was, but he was really good. He was entertaining. There was only a couple of nights we skipped like the variety shows and we're just kind of like doing characters or other stuff. The Broadway style shows, those were must-dos for me. So we made sure to, if the kids needed a nap, more so the little one, if she needed a nap that day to be able to stay up for the show, because we really wanted to make sure that we got to experience those. And we really enjoyed them. Wishes, I thought that one was really good. I liked the mix of the music that they had incorporated in it. Believe was not so much my favorite. I don't know what it was about that one. It just didn't grab me as much, but the kids enjoyed it because that was their one experience with the genie since they had missed Aladdin. So the genie was in that show and they thought he was hysterical and he was great in Aladdin too. I think it sounded like we were maybe one of the last cruises to still see it before they took it down to kind of refurb it or something to make it more like the movie maybe that's out. So that was fun to get to see.
They've since refurbished it, and we haven't talked to anybody yet who has seen it, but I'm kind of curious to see how they changed it up a little bit. But
yeah.
Okay, before we talk about the ports, one last question for you. Any special places that you and your husband found when you kind of were just hanging out together? Was there any like special bars or just nooks and crannies of the ship? I always like to see if somebody has like some place that we've never heard of before. What stood out for you, I guess?
No, that wouldn't be us. We're not like sit at the bar kind of people. So we didn't really do any of that. We were always kind of looking for an activity, or we would use like if the kids were in the club, because it was nice to be able to look around and not have like, can I get this? I need this. Can I have it? I want to get this, to be able to look as adults without kids and say, okay, what kind of souvenirs do we want to bring home? So we just kind of like enjoyed just walking around, enjoying the atmosphere. Like sometimes we'd be down in the atrium when they had, people singing and stuff. But yeah, we weren't like, sitting at the bar or anything. So we didn't find any probably hidden spots that people wouldn't know about.
So yeah, we just enjoy walking around deck 4 sometimes after dinner. The kids take off and go do their own thing for a little bit. My wife and I just, it's nice being outside, the sea breeze going and everything else.
Yeah.
So it's
it was nice to just, walk around. So we enjoyed that.
Okay, well, let's jump into the ports. You guys leave Port Canaveral, have a day at sea, then your third day you're in Cozumel. So your kids are a little bit, broader in age, 3 and 8. How'd you kind of attack that as far as the port adventures go, and what did you guys do in Cozumel?
One thing is we're not like a real big like sit out on the beach family. We like to do kind of like activities, and some of the stuff in Cozumel was geared more towards older kids. So we actually found something that was, it was making chocolate and piñatas. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would be really good for both ages. It was something that was, age appropriate for her, but it wouldn't be too boring for my son. And actually, his little friend from school was on the same cruise, and her mom were doing that same excursion. So he had a blast, buddying up with her, and they were, making their chocolate together and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. It was fun for all of us. And you could tell like that was kind of the excursion that a lot of the families with young kids had picked, because there was a lot of toddlers like my daughter's age. But it was cool. We got to learn, the history of chocolate making in Mexico, and the kids got to make their own, like in the little grinder, grinding up the beans and all that kind of stuff, pouring the sugar in and mixing it all together. And then they had like a little Mickey mold that you put the chocolate in, and they, cooled it for you so that you could take it home. They got to decorate their own piñata. They had a big piñata for them outside to kind of take turns hitting and seeing if they could get it to bust open. And then when all the candy fell out, they could fill their little small piñatas with the candy that fell out of the big piñata. So they thought that was a lot of fun. They really enjoyed that.
That's kind of a cool way to do it. So they get the experience of hitting the piñata, but then building their own. That's pretty cool.
Yes. And it was a nice little souvenir to bring home. The taxi ride there and back was included. It was a pretty short excursion. It was only a couple hours, and it started like around 8 a.m. So we were back to the port by lunchtime. So we just kind of decided to get back on the ship for lunch. And then we made it kind of into a pool day, because the difference in the pool deck on a port day and on a sea day was astronomical. There was so many people packed on there for the sea day. But when we got back on the ship after our excursion and after eating some lunch, like there was like a handful of kids in the pool, a handful of kids on the little Nemo splash pad. And we just got to take turns taking my son on the aqueduct. We went on like 3 or 4 times in a row. So it was a good way to spend the afternoon and get to experience that stuff on the ship without, the huge crowds, because we had walked through on the sea day and my son kept saying, why can't we go to the pool? I really want to go to the pool. I'm like, do you see all of these people? Like, this is not going to be fun. I said, I promise you, if you can just hold on until tomorrow, it's going to be a lot better. And he was like, okay, you're right. Because it was a lot more enjoyable for everybody without all those people.
Definitely. So from there you go on to Grand Cayman. It's a tender port. What did you guys have planned there?
We did not plan anything there. This was the toughest port to find anything that I thought both kids would enjoy. So we ended up just deciding to not book anything. We thought about doing the Stingray City, but when I saw some videos and how easily they'll come over to you and they're looking for the food that they give you to feed them, I was a little worried that my little one would freak out about them being so close and kind of not aggressive, but just, not being fearful of people. So we actually decided to just kind of treat that as an extra sea day. And we hung out. That was the day we had our princess gathering planned for the morning. We did like some other character meets, some drawing classes. And then when she went to take her nap, I stayed in the room with her and my son, and my husband got off the ship just for a little while and kind of walked around the port area, looked at some of the shops and stuff, but didn't really see a whole lot they were, super excited about. So they just wanted to kind of get off and see what it was about, and then came back on the ship. So it was kind of like an extra sea day for us, just doing activities on the ship.
Yeah, that's probably a good call. I think I've told this story probably a couple different times, but the time we went to Grand Cayman, we did a Stingray where we actually went on a catamaran and then swam with them. And my youngest at the time, he was 6, 7, but boy, he was gone into the water before I could catch him. And by the time I got in the water, he was coming back the other way because he was freaked out because he thought the stingray was going to try and get him. And once I got in the water, I realized like that stingray was about the same size as him at the time. So
yes. And so when we saw the videos of them like coming up on people, I'm like, she is going to freak out like that. I said, we may just have to wait and do this when she's older. Yeah. And a lot of the other ones, like we were looking at some not through Disney that maybe included that. And like I don't think it's called the Turtle Farm anymore. I don't remember what they changed the name to. We were looking at stuff that could get us to that, but all of it included snorkeling. And I was like, she's not going to be able to snorkel. So it just ended up, being the best not to spend money on something that we weren't going to all enjoy. So I think we definitely made the right decision in that port. I think it was that was the one where we had the most trouble with her age. But, I was not disappointed to have more time on the ship anyway. So it worked out fine. We'd had another pool day. It all worked out really well. I didn't feel like we missed out on anything there. And, if we ever end up back when they're older, I'm sure we could find something to do. But for this cruise at these ages, I think we made the right call.
Yeah, and twist my arm if you have to spend the day on a Disney ship, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that was fine for me. I didn't mind that at all.
All right, so from there you're on to Falmouth, Jamaica. What'd you guys have planned there?
We actually booked an excursion outside of Disney. It's something Disney offers. It's like a day pass to the Jewel Runaway Bay Beach Resort. But we found it through this website called resortforaday.com that was like half the price of Disney's cost for the same thing. And Delilah was free because I think it's 4 and up you pay. So since she was only 3, she was included with us. So that made it even better. But we got off the ship kind of early. They pick you up in a little shuttle van and bring you over to the resort. It was maybe like a 40-minute drive. It wasn't too bad. And the guy who was driving was really great because he was like pointing out different points of interest and telling us a lot about the island and stuff like that as we drove. We got there maybe around like 9:45. So we had about 5 hours to just hang out at the resort, and we could use their pools. They had kind of a big splash water playground area for small kids with a lazy river around it. There was a couple of water slides, and then they had beach access, plus most of the food and drinks were included. So we were able to eat lunch. We got a bunch of snacks because they had like popcorn and things like that. Some alcohol was included. So we got a couple of, daiquiris and beers while we were there, just hanging out at the beach. So we spent probably half the time at the little splash pad area, water park in the lazy river. And then we spent the second half of the day on the beach, and the kids buried themselves in the sand and, snorkeled in the water, like the shallow water right there for a little bit. They really had the best time. I think that was probably my favorite port day that we spent. It was money very well spent on that one. And then they had the bus bring us right back to the ship in plenty enough time. I think we were back by like 3:30 to get back on the ship. So that was a really fun day. We all enjoyed that one.
How was the water at the beach there? Were the waves fairly low for the kids, for like your daughter?
Yes, okay. She felt comfortable like wading out into the water. My son swam out a little bit further, but the water was pretty gentle. It was just really cold. We still kind of went early in the year to where the temperature outside was nice. Like it was hot, but not too hot, but the water temperature was still kind of cold. Mm-hmm. But no, I felt comfortable in that little small area. They kind of had, the little buoys to tell you not how far out you could go or whatever, but staying close to the shore, it was fine.
Okay, well, so then we're on to, I have to always say this out there, Christy's favorite place, the jewel of the Caribbean, Castaway Cay. What did you guys have planned there, and what did you do?
I was not sure what I was going to expect on this day because everybody raves about Castaway Cay. But like I said, I'm not a big, lay out on the beach person, but there was something about the Disney beach. I don't know. It was just different. It was like the sand was better. It wasn't as annoying. Like it was really nice. So my husband and my son got off the ship early to go do the 5K. My son was not old enough to like officially participate, but he wanted to do it. And my husband just gave him his medal when they finished. And my daughter and I did the Frozen Gathering first. So we kind of did that early and then went back to change into our swim stuff and met them outside, off the ship. But we didn't really plan anything. We spent a good couple hours on the family beach, just letting the kids play in the sand. My son snorkeled again. We were right there by that area, so he could snorkel. I thought he would maybe want to do the pelican plunge stuff, but he wasn't really interested in it yet, maybe when he's a little older. So it was a super relaxing day. They went to Scuttle's Cove for a little while, maybe about an hour and a half. And so I actually just like took a nap on a beach chair, and it was really nice. Like I just didn't have to worry about keeping an eye on a kid for a little while. And I had a little spot in the shade, and it was just nice. We had lunch at Cookies Too, which was good, was really good. We went and checked out the splash area for the kids, but that wasn't anything that they were super excited about. Like we found it, and it was just kind of a couple of holes where some water was squirting out. So it made me think it was more for like maybe 1 to 2 year old kind of toddlers. So that wasn't really for them. But yeah, we didn't do the bikes or anything. We just kind of kicked back, relaxed, and, enjoyed the atmosphere and the, it was just really nice. Like we just enjoyed it a lot more than I thought we would, or a lot more than I thought I would, especially, not loving the beach. But the only bad thing that happened was my son left his hat in the kids club, and it was his favorite little Spider-Man hat, and it never turned back up. So I think maybe somebody took it home with them. So then it was a good thing we won those DCL hats. That kind of eased the pain a little bit to get a brand new hat. But, that kind of put a little damper on the day at the end of the day. We did go to the post office too. They leave some postcards in your stateroom. So we took those off with us and stopped at the post office there on the beach on the way back and got them stamped. We let each kid kind of write something on it and mailed them home to ourselves. So that was really fun little souvenir to get a couple weeks after you get home.
Yeah, great way to kind of remind you and relive the trip again a couple weeks later.
Yeah, that was fun to look out for those.
Yeah, I'm not. My wife is a huge beach person. I get bored after a while. I want to go do something, but there's something about getting there, and maybe it's just because there are times when it's relaxing on the cruise, and I'm not. But you're busy, and so good on you to be able to have that time just to take a nap underneath the shade of the trees, and just there's something relaxing about that day, being a Castaway Cay. And I think maybe it's just because it's like near the end of the cruise and you've been going, and it's just a time to just sit back and watch your kids run around and play in the sand. It's a great place.
For sure. Yeah. And it was just like lots of kids around. So they were sharing each other's, beach toys and stuff like that. So we all really enjoyed it. We really, really did.
Well, unfortunately, that kind of brings you to the end of the cruise, Castaway Cay, and then you're back to Port Canaveral. Did you have any thoughts about that last day getting off the ship? And I'm assuming you guys went back to Disney again and stayed?
We did. So it wasn't too bad. I mean, we kind of like the day before Castaway on the last sea day, we did like a majority of our packing. So that way we could really not have to worry about like, hurry up, get back from the beach, like pack everything up and put your bags outside and all that. We were able to kind of get back on, get our stuff, organized to put our luggage out that night. So it was pretty easy getting off. We weren't in a rush since we didn't have a flight to catch or we didn't have to get home. So we went to breakfast at Cabanas. It was really nice. So since we had skipped the dining room the night before, we hadn't seen our assistant server to tell her we weren't going to be there. And so when we were at breakfast, I was standing at the buffet with my son and I heard her voice behind me and she didn't even realize it was us, but she was coming up and saying something about make sure you get one of these. And so I turned around and I was, it was just like that. Oh, we're leaving you, and she was so excited to see us one more time before we got off the ship and all that. But after that, I mean, it was just, getting off is, it's sad, but it was pretty efficient. It didn't take us long to kind of get our luggage and get through customs and all that. So it wasn't bad.
And did you guys
sad?
Yeah, it is sad. Did you guys go back to Disney World and stay another night, or what did you guys do?
We did, okay. Yeah. We went to back to Kidani, and I had kind of thought that we would like hang out at the pool. We were like done with pools and bathing suits and all that kind of stuff by then. Like after a week of that, we were so done with that. So we actually just went to Disney Springs for a few hours, and then we came back and we were all pretty tired. So we just sat around in the room. There's actually a little like activity room in the resort where they have like a movie playing and they have different games and stuff, crafts. So we stayed there for a little while until our room was ready because it did take a little bit before our room was ready. So the kids enjoyed that. And then we just kept it a low key night because we were pretty exhausted. Yeah.
Thinking back on it, before we talk about what's next for you guys, do you have any advice for people traveling? Kind of thinking about it, any specific advice for families traveling that first time?
I felt like we maybe overplanned our trip, with it being the first one. We kind of felt like we had to do it all. Like we did a character breakfast. We did all the, meetings we could. We had our Star Wars day. So we booked like 3 Star Wars character meets that day, and we only made it to one of them. We had, excursions every day, and we wanted to, it was kind of a lot. And I feel like by the end of the week, we kind of had figured out, okay, we really want to relax. And so it was just kind of whatever we got to was fine. And if we didn't, then you know what, it's okay. We still had a good time. So I think it's easy when you're so used to Disney World planning to get too hyper focused on we have to do everything in this one week and I have to have every moment of my day planned. And the cruise line is just really not like that. So going into it with an attitude of more go with the flow, and there's always going to be something to do. So even if you miss out on that one thing you wanted to do, they have so many activities that are family friendly and so much you can find to do on the ship. It's not something to stress about the way you would stress about a Disney World trip, which is inevitable. I mean, everybody stresses about their Disney World itinerary. So I think just going into it, planning to relax. You have to plan in that relaxing time.
Make sure you put in that relaxing time. Maybe
plan that relaxing time. Exactly. Like don't try to squeeze it all in.
And then just kind of thoughts, 7-day versus a 3-day. Were you happy you did that?
Absolutely. I loved all the time we had. We got really close with this one cast member from the first day of the cruise all the way through to the end. So I feel like on a 3-day, we wouldn't have maybe had as much time to build that relationship with the people on the ship. It's such a quick turnover and you don't have as much time I see a lot of people say like stay on the ship in Nassau or whatever. But I feel like that's probably something a lot of people do. So you don't get that same like kind of empty ship experience that you might get like we did on our Grand Cayman day when we didn't get off the ship. So it's just more time to spread yourself around and, get to experience the pool when it's not crowded. And get to, meet the characters. You have more opportunities to meet them in different costumes and, stuff like that. So it's not all like compacted into just a few days. So definitely was very happy we went with the 7-night.
Awesome. So looking ahead then, what's next for you guys? Did you book another cruise, put a placeholder down, or is it something you guys will do again?
We booked a placeholder while we were on. The first few days, I think my husband was a little bit skeptical. Like, I think it just took him a little bit of time. He kept making the kind of sarcastic comment when I would say, like, are you having fun? He would say, I'm enjoying the cruise experience, because I think it was a little stressful. The kids not wanting to go to the kids club. So we were constantly like, well, what do you want to do? And they're like, I don't know, but they just wanted to be around you, and you kind of thought maybe you'd have that little bit of time, just you and your husband, to go off and do things. And it wasn't like that at first. And so once we kind of got into the groove of the cruise, we all absolutely fell in love with it. So he was like, yeah, no, we need to go book a placeholder. So we have one that we are planning when they release the next round of itineraries. We're hoping for either Mardi Gras week, or we're possibly looking at Martin Luther King week for 2021, because Mardi Gras is going to overlap with President's Week. And when we were looking at, previous cruises and cost and stuff, it seems like that President's Week is maybe a more popular time, so it's more expensive. So we were looking maybe at doing something like in January instead.
That's awesome that you guys have that Mardi Gras week too.
Oh, it is.
To have that, because you're totally right. I mean, spring break, it's just amazing the way the prices go up on the cruises, because it's supply and demand.
That was our first choice. That was actually when we thought we were going to go. And when the prices came out, we were like, whoa, like, hey, let's look at Mardi Gras instead. So it is nice to have that week. But every few years it lines up with President's Week, and it kind of messes up your plans a little bit. Like, it makes it more crowded in Disney World, and apparently it makes the cruise line a little more expensive. So those are our two options, but we'll see, once they release the rates and the itineraries, which one works better for us.
Well, good on you doing the smart way and getting that placeholder, because that's going to save you some money when they do come out, and you can book it that first day, which is nice. So, one quick thing before we wrap up here, Christy. Disney's sailing out of New Orleans, and you grew up in New Orleans. Do you have any advice for people that might be traveling to New Orleans to sail on board the Magic? Or, on board the Wonder?
The Wonder. So there's a lot of, I don't think people think of it as a family-friendly destination, but there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with kids, like the Audubon Zoo and the Insectarium, the aquarium. Like, my parents got like one of the family passes to those, so they bring our kids all the time, and every once in a while we go there. It's just so much fun. The zoo is so nice. Like, it's not one of those like sad, depressing zoos where there's just like animals behind gates and stuff. There's really nice like habitats and stuff for them. It's almost more like Animal Kingdom kind of setup. Those are really fun. The World War II Museum, and just kind of walking around during the day, like Bourbon Street at night is a very different thing than the French Quarter during the day. But going to get some beignets at Cafe Du Monde and stuff, we were tempted by those cruises, because it would definitely help not having to really factor in that travel expense. But because we hadn't gone on one yet, we were hesitant to like book another one already when that was released.
Right.
So hopefully it'll prove to be, a good thing for Disney Cruise Line, and they continue to do it, because that would be excellent if we could cruise out of there. I think we would enjoy that.
Yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on Tiana's Place and the beignets that they have on board there as well too.
Probably not as good as Cafe Du Monde, but I'm willing to take the challenge and try.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Christy, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your family's experience on board the Disney Fantasy, this first time cruise. I know we didn't touch on the Star Wars stuff, but I thought,
That's okay. We were not big Star Wars people, so we did not really do a whole lot of the Star Wars stuff anyway. The only thing that I'll mention that we did that was kind of fun was my son did the Jedi training. So that was another thing that we signed up for in advance, and I wasn't really sure if he'd want to do it. He was kind of hesitant about being up in front of people, but I think it was a little bit better of an experience for a first timer than in the park, because in the park the crowd of people watching you can be a lot more, and I think that idea intimidated him, whereas on the ship it's like just the other parents. Like, I don't think people really come just to watch the Jedi training, so it was a little bit smaller, more intimate. It made him feel a little bit more comfortable, so he really enjoyed that. He got to fight Darth Vader, so that was really like the only true like Star Wars thing we did besides meeting the droids. Otherwise, we're just not a Star Wars family. Like, we are not one of those that booked it for the Star Wars day. So that was actually kind of a tough day for me to find stuff to do. I'm kind of hoping that 2021 maybe will be a little bit before they start doing adding the Star Wars days, but we'll probably end up with another one just based off the time of year that we're trying to cruise. So
yeah, well, at least it's only one day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Again, thank you so much for taking time. Thanks for listening to the show, and thank you so much for taking time to come on and share your experiences with everybody. When you guys come back from your next Disney cruise, give us a shout, and we'll talk some more Disney Cruise Line.
Great, will do.
Awesome. Thanks, Christy.
Great, thank you.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Christy for coming on and sharing her and her family's experiences as they sailed for the first time with Disney Cruise Line on board the beautiful Disney Fantasy out to the Western Caribbean. And she had a lot of really good tips and tricks for those of you who are first-time cruisers or coming up on your first cruise with Disney Cruise Line. Hopefully that all helps. And some good tips there for those of you who may be sailing out of New Orleans, some family things to do down in just an amazing city. That is one place that I hope they continue to cruise out of, because I think that is a place that our family would like to cruise out of at some point. So look for the Disney Wonder sailing out of New Orleans here next year. So between now and our next show, if you would like to help support our show, you can do so through our Patreon program over at patreon.com/DCL podcast. You can go over there and find out all the information there, and we want to thank each and every one of you who have done so. We also want to thank all of you who have gone over to iTunes and left a review. That helps us grow the show and get the show known within the podcast community and the Disney and cruising community as well. So between now and our next show, if you are heading out on your next adventure, all of us here at the DCL podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on that next vacation. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL podcast.